Hello everyone, this is your host Professor Reha here with the actual Grim Dawn tier list F tier. Shout out to Morz for pointing out that I accidentally re-uploaded my C tier, classifying it as F tier. I accidentally uploaded the wrong video. But I also unfortunately deleted the original because I was clearing out room on my hard drive a couple of weeks ago. So this is a re-recording, but thank you to Morz for letting me know that I am a dumbcoff. So, I also want to preface this video with a very important point that's worth reiterating. I am not saying that these four classes are bad. I am saying that they do not work well together without specific items. They require items to be effective. That is what I'm saying. They are extremely good with these items, with the required items, and we're not going to talk about what those items are. This is simply me talking about why I dislike playing these classes because of their requirement for specific items. Down the road, I'll be doing class examinations of all of these classes, or I'll be discussing what those items are, but for now, this tier list is only to talk about why I don't like these classes from an improv or from a leveling example. Okay? So first off, for offense, the F tier in the offense category, and also, by the way, I'm not going to give out specific numbers here, because if I were going to do so, we'd be getting into triple decimals, quadruple decimals, so just understand that these are the absolute dregs, in my opinion, of classes without itemization. And the first one of these is the Apostate, the Inquisitor-Necromancer combination. This is the weakest offensive combination, primarily because, at first glance, it looks like, hey, Professor, you can focus on cold damage and really be able to boost that up. Yeah, you can, sure. But there is no boosts, there is no resistance decreases for cold damage between the Inquisitor and the Necromancer. Yes, absolutely, they both can do cold damage. You can turn Drain Essence into cold damage. You can get Bone Harvest. That's cold damage. That's fine. But you don't have any option of actually legitimately increasing them. If you're thinking of ranged expertise, that's elemental damage. That's only 1/3 cold. This doesn't even decrease elemental resistance at all. You're just very stuck here with what you purely have to use items to increase your cold damage. There's just no getting around the fact. You can utilize the Inquisitor Seal, specifically Arcane Empowerment, to increase all damage, sure, and same thing with Deadly Aim. But then you could just as easily use that with any other combination and get the same results. There is no specific cold damage increase. You go into Aura of Censure, sure, there's elemental resistance drop. That's delightful. It also does fire damage, which, again, isn't specifically boosted by either of these classes, and the Necromancer can't even do fire damage on its own anyways. So, in terms of building from the start or leveling this up as your first class, this is a nightmare. This is something that you would want to prep with a Potion of Clarity, Clarity of Purpose Potion. You want to already have a character level 100 so you can grind for equipment for this class. This is really rough, because basically what you're doing when you play this improv, or you play this without items already lined up for it, you are playing either a pure Inquisitor and pulling in maybe Drain Essence, maybe, or more likely, Bone Harvest, and then ignoring literally everything else here. Or you're playing almost pure Necromancer and only grabbing Inquisitor Seal so you can work your way to Death Sentence for the Aether Resistance decrease. Or possibly Inquisitor Seal as well. Maybe you want a spicy little Deadly Aim. You know, it's totally up to you. But at the end of the day, you're not really mixing and matching any of the skills here unless you've got specific items that convert the damage of one skill to another or happen to enhance a skill from each side. For example, an item that would increase Word of Renewal and, say, Ravenous Earth. Great. But that's about all you're really pulling out of this. So from that perspective, this isn't the worst offensive combination. Also keep in mind, I actually want to take a brief moment. Aura of Conviction increases physical, pierce, and internal trauma damage. The only form of any of those damage types is the pierce damage in Bone Harvest up to Dread, all the way through Soul Harvest. Soul Harvest doesn't actually increase piercing, never mind. All the way to Dread. I mean, that's the only pierce damage there. Aura of Censure decreases enemy elemental resistance. You've got Necrotic Edge for some cold damage. You have Grave Chill attached to the Drain Essence, and you've got Bone Harvest. That's it. That is literally it. You want physical damage? Alright. You have Spectral Wrath? That's all you've got. Tough luck to you. If you use Harbinger of Souls, Vitality and Aether? Alright. Death Sentence. Maybe you want the self-heal of Word of Renewal, although, frankly, with all the self-heal from Necromancer, you probably aren't really going to see that as necessary. Maybe you want Deadly Aim. Sure. Maybe you want Inquisitor Seal. With Arcane Empowerment. Also works. That's all you're pulling from here. You're not going to be grabbing any other skills here, unless an item enhances them, or converts their damage type to Vitality or Aether. You could theoretically go into Alagast's Arcane Net, but you certainly wouldn't be going into Lightning Tether, because that's going to remain electric, and you don't want that. You just want the lightning damage. I'm sorry, the Aether damage. That is all you can do. That's it. The rest of it, you need items for. And even then, for either of these cases, a lot of the time you'll be boosting the damage out with items anyways. You'll need to get this to work. Because otherwise you're playing mostly a single class. So with that out of the way, moving on to the defensive one, this would be Soldier and Necromancer, which faces a very similar actual issue of the previous one, what was it, the Apostate? Yeah, the Apostate, where this is often heralded as incredibly defensive. And there is exactly one way this makes sense defensively. Running Cadence, running Menhir's Will, you've got Military Conditioning, you've got Shield Training, you've got Veterancy, you've got, maybe if you're feeling bold, Markovian's Advantage and Zolhan's Technique, but neither of these are important. And you run Reaper's Strike, and Spectral Binding. Maybe you're feeling bold and you go Siphon Souls. You're not... I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, but all these people who will disagree have a build. They go into this with a specific set of equipment, and it works great. Don't get me wrong. With the right equipment, this is fantastic. Just like with the Apostate. The Apostate's amazing if you have the equipment. If you don't, grinding this thing up is a nightmare. Again, you're overwhelmingly relying on one of these two masteries to get you through the game, and using the other one primarily for attributes and one or two possible skills. For example, you could choose to be very soldier heavy without any equipment, and then you're only really pulling out Spectral Wrath, in all honesty. Maybe you're busting out Reaping Strike or Necrotic Edge if you have a physical damage weapon, because of course 110% weapon damage. But by and large, you're only really looking at Spectral Wrath for the physical resistance decrease. You're not looking at anything else. And if you're going really heavy on the Necromancer, you're either going to be using Field Command to buff your pets if you're going Master of Death, or you're specifically using Menhir's Will, Military Conditioning, and probably Shield Training. Maybe you're using Veterancy. You're not really going to use anything else out of here by and large, because you don't have anything that boosts that damage type. Because the Necromancer has 0 physical damage anywhere in this setup. None. But the Soldier can boost physical and internal trauma damage, and even further through Olorun's Rage, as well as Pierce, which of course we know Bone Harvest it does. Great. But the Soldier also, on the other hand, does not inflict Aether or Vitality damage, so the Spectral Wrath is the only thing here that the Soldier's going to care about, and like I said, potentially Reaping Strike because it pulls weapon damage there. And obviously that depends heavily on what your weapon damage is. But by and large, you might use Overguard as your Necromancer. I mean, the Necromancer gets more out of the Soldier because of all these passive skills, but the Soldier gets extremely little out of the Necromancer. And defensively, this is very weak as a result. Well, I won't say very weak. Defensively, this is the weakest of the class combinations because, again, in order to really make this work, you need specific items. The Defiler is actually my least favorite to play because it takes a really long time to get to the point where you can equip the items you need to get this to work, because the items that make this work, I believe the earliest item that really makes this work is level 40, but I might be misremembering that. If you know of an item off the top of your head that's earlier that really makes this combination work, leave it down in the comment section below. To my recollection, level 40 is the earliest I've gotten this to work. It's very, very bad in the early game, because again, even more so than the other three, this is the worst incompatibility. Again, Demolitionist only pulls out Spectral Wrath for the physical resistance, and even then, that's not a heavy part of the Demolitionist setup. You go Fire Strike, sure, you're getting some physical damage. Yeah, that's great. You go Granado, or potentially Canister Bomb. Yeah, you're doing some physical and pierce damage. Okay, that's it. That is literally it. Oh, I'm sorry, you've also got the Mortar Trap with the big one as well. You could use Stunjacks for the physical damage, but all you're really going to do here is physical damage. The elemental damage, you're not enhancing. You don't have any enhancements for elemental damage at large. Fire and Lightning specifically, which the Necromancer doesn't do, and you've got nothing bonus for cold from the Necromancer or from the Demolitionist. So from a compatibility standpoint, there is zero that crosses over without the use of items. And the same thing for the Necromancer. Maybe Necromancer pulls out Blast Shield. It's the only skill here in the Demolitionist that the Necromancer can use regardless of what the context is. Same thing with Spectral Wrath for the Demolitionist. I mean, there's just so little compatibility here. Each one only can pull one skill from the other one without very specific items. Whether these be items that convert the fire damage to poison and acid damage, which is an item that's actually pretty easy to get once you're level 94. Or something that converts the fire damage to vitality damage. Something like that. It is an absolute nightmare to grind this to the point where you get the items equipped that you need to make this work. It's terrible from that perspective. Again, this is fantastic if you have the items for it. You have to get it to the point that you can equip those items, though. I'll explain more about that a little bit later on at the end of the video, why this is a problem. Because obviously, ostensibly speaking, it doesn't sound like much of a problem. Oh, just level them up. Yes, technically true. But I'll explain that a little bit at the end. But the last one, in terms of versatility, the Dervish is the worst. Now, the class itself actually does okay damage. You do have to make kind of a choice between a shield or dual wielding if you want to go melee, and you do have some trade-offs for each, which is fine, because there's plenty of other options. But really, the only link here is physical damage. Alright? Or possibly poison acid. It really depends on which one you want. Right? If you were to pick Path of the Three, then your Nightblade options rapidly descend into Amros's Blade Burst, Knight's Chill, Shadow Strike for the poison acid damage that it eventually does, right here specifically, and also early on, I believe. Nope, just right here. And Merciless Repertoire. That's it. And then if you decide to go with Divine Mandate, you're looking at physical damage. So you're looking at the dual wielding up here. You're looking at Shadow Strike again. No, Shadow Strike doesn't do physical damage, does it? No, it doesn't. Okay, I was right on that one. Then you're just looking at the dual wielding. Versatility-wise, you basically pick one of these two exclusives, and you're locked into very specific skills for that. And there's just really no way around that. It's... In terms of versatility, it's horrific. There is no option for pets. You are either doing poison and acid, with vitality as a subtype and cold as a subtype, which is fine, or you're doing physical damage and trying to increase your elemental damage to the point where you're not just doing physical damage, which is already by default widely resisted by nemesis, bosses, and some heroes anyways. So, in terms of versatility, this particular class, the Dervish, is horrific. Again, fantastic with the right items. But why is this so much of a problem? Why are items so much of a problem for me? Well, I alluded to this with the Defiler, but ultimately, you have to be a certain minimum level to equip certain things. And a lot of these classes that I've talked about here require items that are often level 50 or more to actually start to really effectively function. So for your first 50 levels, you're actually basically playing a single mastery until you get to level 50 plus, and you start actually equipping the equipment that will get the combination to actually work together, either by converting the damage of one or two skills from one type of damage to another, or if it's just increasing a combination of skills that actually work very well together and actually giving you the kinds of damage increases that you need. So this is why these are all F tier. These are personally my least favorite classes to level to 100, for the reasons I've stated. Once I get them to 100 and I can equip all of the equipment that they need, I'm fine. But getting them to level 50 is a slog for me because I'm only playing one mastery, and for me, that gets stale unpleasantly quickly. That's a me problem, I understand that. But it is something that I have a problem with, and it's just not... It's not as good of a time, and they don't really, like I have stated here, they don't really necessarily work too well together inherently. It is 100% in their equipment. So this is why I've rated these as the F tier. So, if you're going to play these classes, have your equipment already there. Use the Explorer's set to make the leveling go faster so you can get to the point you can equip that stuff that you need for these classes. And finally, don't give up on them before level 50. It's really often level 50-ish. The Defiler, I remember a scythe that's level 40 that I usually kind of trigger in my brain as being, I can't remember what the name of the scythe, but it's the one that just clicks and like that. Now I'm rolling. But at roughly level 50, give or take a 10 or so levels, and you're going to be able to get these to work. But those first 40 to 50, 60 levels, those are rough, because you're only playing the one class. So, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you once again to Morz for pointing out that I am really unobservant. And here is the actual F tier list. If you liked this, please like and subscribe. If you didn't, please ignore me. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, ideas, what have you, please leave them down in the comment section below. And thank you all very much for joining me, and have a great 24 hours.